Narayana, 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 Narayana. So continuing with our previous segment, so how do we falsify this concept that I am this body, mind, intellect? That is all uh, that is to be clarified. So for this, the Mandukya analysis of the Avasthatraya says the tri-state model. Basically, here we want to take into consideration our entire experience, not just the waking experience, not just the waking experience, because waking experience for us in a 24-hour day is only about 10 hours, 12 hours. Then a significant time goes away in the sleep. And this sleep has two further segments. One is the dream and one is a deep sleep, which is very tiny portion in fact for most of our lives. Especially the older you get, the dream is more and deep sleep is less. So in the waking state, we are a particular person by a given name, having a profession, maybe wife, children, husband, children, father, mother, etc. We have a story. And what is important is, in this Avasthatraya, we really don't want to spend in the content of the state. What is our life story is immaterial. Whether one is a king, or a beggar, or a merchant, or a businessman, or an educator, or a teacher, it doesn't really matter. We are not going to the actual content of the story. We simply take that to be the waking state. So this is not like people do, analysis of the, psychoanalysis we do, why the husband is fighting with the wife, or children are behaving certain way, why there are no good relationships or employer relationships. All this analysis we are not doing. It is immaterial. We are not interested in improving or how to improve our waking experience. That is not the aim of this analysis. All that is bundled together as one called waking state. In the waking state, I experience certain things. There I am an individual with a name. Now I get up in the morning, maybe 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and go about my day's work as an agent of certain actions, as a karta of certain actions, and come back from office or workplace, have some time at home, and then eat lunch, dinner and sleep, maybe 9, 10, 11, sometime. And when we go to sleep, there will be a gap, a disconnection from our identity of the waking state, some darkness, and then we start experiencing our own identity as another person. Maybe I was a worker in my waking state. Now this identified person may not be a worker. He may be a manager. He may be a man, a woman, a king, or a slave, or an animal, thief. The role is entirely different. It is not necessarily the role that I played in my waking state. So the role, name, environment, conditions. For example, in the waking state, I had my dinner and went to bed, and in the sleep, I am hungry. I went to bed at 10 p.m. and in my dream, I just see that I get up after the sunrise and go to work. There is only that much. There is not a continuity of time or a person between the waking and the dreamer. the waker and the dreamer, there is no continuity of time or place. I might sleep in Delhi and my dream may flourish in Varanasi or in San Francisco. There is no continuity of place, time, or circumstances and the people with whom I interact between the waking and the dream. This is all we want to conclude. We are not really interested in even knowing what exactly transpires in the dream state either. But we want to conclude that the identity of the person is different when you compare the waking and the dream states. The time is different. There is a discontinuity of time. This is important observation. We'll come to this, why it is important. And then if you are lucky, or if I am lucky, I may cross the dream state and go to a deep sleep wherein neither the waker nor the dreamer will be present. There will be nobody, no identification. The waker and the dreamer vanish entirely for some time. And then how do I know that the person vanished? Because after some lapse, I come back as a dreamer. This time again the dreamer could be different. It's a different person, identification. And somebody may come back to waking state. But again, from the dreaming state to the waking state, there will be a total disconnect. And then they wake up differently. If there is a smooth transition from one to the other, you will carry the person and the personality into a new state, and that never happens. So these are the observations that we have. Now we say that I slept, I had a sound sleep, and I was very happy. I had a refreshing sleep. But who is saying this? It is the waker who is saying this. But did this waker, the Swami or you, did this speaker or this waker exist in the dream state? No, there was another identity. And in the deep sleep, there was nobody. So the speaker, the waker who is saying that he had a good sleep, sound sleep, and he was happy, and I didn't know anything, is not truly his words. It's not truly his experience. Because if the person has vanished entirely, how could that vanished person have an experience of sleep and happiness of sleep? So the waker is not really the one who experienced deep sleep or happiness of the deep sleep. But whatever is that sleeping, whatever is that happiness obtained in that deep sleep state is brought into the waking state, and that has been expressed by the waker. Because the waking state nullifies the dream state, because whatever I was in the dream, I am not that in the waking. So the dream state is nullified, and the waking state is nullified in the dream. So none of these two, neither of these two, waker or the dreamer, can be truth, because one state negates the other state. And beyond that, in the deep sleep state, there is nobody. But there is an experience of happiness. So there is an experience of happiness, and And that experiencer of happiness is not an identified person like in the waking and deep sleep waking and the dream states, but still accumulates experience. And that accumulated happiness of the deep sleep is expressed by the waker. When you put together these three different levels of experience, we have to say that the true experiencer, the recorder, the recollector, the manifester, the experience of the waking is taken in a small proportion and the dream is projected, and there will be an identified agent who experiences it. And that is carried into total annihilation in the deep sleep, except that there is a happiness. When there is no identification, there is happiness. And all this is expressed in the waking state. So what we have to say is, the one who is actually experiencing this waking, dream and the deep sleep, there is an entity. And that entity is sharing the knowledge gained in the waking and takes it into the dream and partially experiences it. Without using this body that I had in the waking state, it has its own way of experiencing directly with the mind. It bypasses the indriyas, means it doesn't use this ear, eye, nose, etc., which are being used in the waking state. It doesn't use them in the dream state, but directly recreates some partial experience gained out of the experience of the waking in the dream state. So this entity, which is common for the three states, is actually a permanent entity or a continuing entity through these three states. And that I know. So it has to be myself. Because if it is not me, if it is somebody else, how would I know that I was happy, that I had a dream? Now I am like this in the waking state. The dream was a bad dream, etc. So, my identity now is something which is passing through these three states. That is my identity. It has to be myself. I am not other than myself. Because if it is other than myself, how would I know? So now, in this waking state, I am at this cross-section where I have two identities. An identity as this person, as this individual, as this agent. This is one identity. And there is one identity which is behind this, which is accumulating, keeping track of these experiences of this waker. That is also me. That is also myself. It is not that I am this waker experiencer and the one which is the entity which is keeping track of these experiences is different from me or other than me. It cannot be that. Because if it is other than that, how would these come and reflect in my dream? And then how would I have this experience that I slept, I dreamt? So now I have a question to solve for myself. I have two identities which I now recognize, which I did not know before I made this avastha-traya analysis or a tri-state analysis. Having taken my life of the three states and not just ignoring anything, I come to a different conclusion, not about individual experiences of a given particular state, waking, dream, etc. I'm not interested in that, as we said in the beginning. But we know only that I really have to understand what is my identity. In the waking, I seem to have one identity with a name and circumstances and time. In the dream, I have a different name and a different person I am, and I have different circumstances. Then in the deep sleep, I have no name, no identity. But as an experiencer, I was present, because I am now speaking about that experience of having not been anybody. Having not been anybody in deep sleep is my experience. Just like I was certain person in the waking, certain person in the dream, I was not a certain person in the deep sleep is my experience, which I am able to say now as a waker. So the waker, when he is expressing, the waker is not experiencing his own experience, because this waker was not there in the deep sleep. But the experience of the entity which is passing through three states, that experience is projected through this speaker, through this waker. So now it is up to me to really ascertain the reality of this waker. The waker who comes and goes every day once, or maybe more than that. And the dreamer who comes and goes equally once a day or maybe more. And the important thing, in the deep sleep state, and I say I was not there, you cannot say many people are not there, right? When there is no identity, the lack of identity is not a multiplicity, it's just one. So this identity which is passing through all the three states is myself. And I also have different entities, identification in the waking state, for example. This state of identifying myself as two different entities, one really real and one is real for that waking state alone. This is what is expressed in the Mundaka Upanishad. Dva suparna sayuja sakhaya samanam vriksham parishasvajatam tayoranyaha pippalam svaduatti anasnan anyaha abhichakasidi. So it says, two birds, dva suparna sayuja sakhaya. Sayuja means they are together. They are always together. Sayuja sakhaya. One is in all the transactions, one together. Sayuja sakhaya. They are not quarreling with each other. Sayuja sakhaya samanam vriksham parishasvajatam. They really are hosted on the same tree. They are perching on the same tree. They are parked on the same tree branch. Samanam vriksham parishasvajatam tayor anyaha pippalam swaduvatti. In that, one of the birds eats the fruits. Pippalam swaduvatti. The waker is eating. As waker, he eats. As waker, he is the enjoyer. As waker, he is the agent. Anasnan anyaha abhichakashiti. The other one, without eating, just stays put. He is just an onlooker. Abhichakashiti. Abhichakasi iti. Abhichakasiti. So it is not really a Dvaita expression here. I learned this word, for example, this is more of a diagnostic. I learned this word diagnostic through another conversation. This is a diagnostic of oneself. it is not a normative statement that, oh, there are two birds, one Jiva and one Paramahatma. There's nothing like that. This is my own experience. Before the analysis, I thought I was only one experiencer, which was probably you can call it Jiva. But now when I go through the three states, I come to say I am truly the one who has been noting all these three states. I am the Sakshi of the three states. But I am not touched by any of them. Because if I am touched by one of them, I can't take this information into the other state that will get corrupted. Today I paint this wall with red, then I paint with green, I paint with white. It will be no color at all. So this onlooker, the Sakshi, doesn't really eat or experience anything, but it becomes simply a background of recording various experiences as an identified individual. So the identified individual is the same and the Sakshi is the same. It is not that there are two. So this unidentified Sakshi somehow appears as an individual waker, an individual dreamer, and an individual sleeper, deep sleeper. Take it for like that. Because this is how it is explained. The individual is not gone. Because if the individual is gone totally in the deep sleep state, not in the sense of an individual, but as the source for the future projections of the dream and the waking states. It's very important. So it's only a kind of a bija rupa of the experiences that remain there, but there's no individual. But you take it in that way to be able to explain how the waker and the dreamer come about, from what source of experiences. So in the deep sleep, it is the true essence alone. If you see the Brihadaranyaka or the Mandukya carefully, you will understand that there is really no individuality holding there. But avidya is there, that is not knowing. The self has not identified its true essence as something not connected with these experiences. That it hasn't identified. So that avidya is there. So the minimum conclusion that we come is, I am truly the experiencer as a Sakshi of the three states. And now this analysis we are doing in the waking, not in the dream or in the deep sleep. So the problem is in the waking state. The solution also has to come here. So here we are presented to choose which is your true identity. Am I the waker who comes and goes, leaving certain impressions, becoming an agent for causing certain impressions? Or am I the witness of those? So obviously, answer is that I am the witness of those, because I have to persist through the three states. So all that is asked in the Vedanta is, give up your false identification with this waker experiencer, this waker, one who is in the waking state. That false identification with that agentship, with that enjoyership of the mind, needs to be given up. So, in the Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, in the Sravana, the entire Shruti Vakyas, means the Upanishads, will be analyzed in this way. The Manana is being able to sit with this idea that there is a Dva Suparna, it is my own identity. One of them is a false identity, one is a true identity. So one has to get convinced on this. Sravana may not bring you to this conviction that yes, truly I am this non-dual self which is passing through and persisting through the three states. So I am that. So rest all is false, is mithya. Is mithya means it appears but it is not true. So this contemplation is manana, not the entire story of the Upanishads again. And anything contrary to this conclusion that this Jagat is a mithya needs to be demolished in this manana state. Wherever we see reality in this Jagat, means Jayati Gacchati, as they say, Jagat. All the worldly experience, empirical experience, that is just an appearance, because it is not real. It is not an experience of any real entity. There are other explanations which we could elaborate, but I want to limit this for now. So we want to say this Jagat is mithya. Doing the work of Jagat being mithya is the manana. Take up every category beautifully. The Buddhism, Nagarjuna does a great job, phenomenal job. We should salute. He shows the method as to how this world is non-existent. They pick up every category. They pick up body, they pick up the self, they pick up samskaras, they pick up, every other category, sensations, and say they don't have a self. Neti neti. In a way, it's a neti neti, as it is taught in the Upanishads. A more elaborate analytical method as to how to negate every experience that is making this apparent waking state individual as a reality which we are perceiving. Now you have to make it unreal. That is the analytical method of Nagarjuna. What is blamed as Sunyavada, the great master of Nagarjuna. Unfortunately, people who don't understand, they give bad names to it. But exactly he does the same job as what Shankara did. That is why we don't find any complaint really against Nagarjuna in the Brahma Sutras. They, like we say, you make a scarecrow and then beat it, like that. A straw man and then you beat it, like that. They raise a Sunyavada and then demolish the Sunyavada without really touching what they meant by Sunyata. So anyways, so here we know that this apparent individual waker dreamer is not a reality, and the Sakshi alone is that which I am. Do an analytical method, it is mananam. And once that is not needed, just living your life, focused on the avasthatraya sakshi bhava, is nididhyasana. So this is the method that has been certified, which works, because there is nothing else that works. So people who are really interested in knowing the truth, God knowledge, yogic method, they need to do this and not other waste their time in fruitless rituals, fruitless asceticism. Bhagavan also said, sarvam gnanaplavena eva prujinam santarishyasi. Like Bhagavan said, when you take the boat of knowledge, then you cross this world of samsara. So I hope the task is clear. I hope this short, brief presentation, though it's not maybe completely detailed because of the objectivity to limit in time. And depending on your needs, we can continue some other time. And wish you all a happy time studying, analyzing, and Nididhyasana. Narayana, 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 Narayana.